Support for I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere comes from listeners like you who support us through Patreon and Substack. Bonus material, thank you gifts, and more await at patreon.com/IHearOfSherlock and at ihearofsherlock.substack.com. And now you can enjoy some iHo's swag, mugs, notepads, and oval stickers, available in our store. Find it at ihearofsherlock.com/merchandise.
I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, episode 340, The Six Napoleons of Baltimore.
I hear of Sherlock everywhere since you became a strong man.
In a world where it's always 1895, it's I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, a podcast for devotees of Mr. Sherlock Holmes, the world's first consulting detective.
I've heard of you before. You're Holmes the meddler, Holmes the busybody, Holmes the Scotland Yard Jack in office.
The game's afoot as we interview authors, editors, creators, and other prominent Sherlockians on various aspects of the great detective in popular culture.
As we go to press, sensational developments have been reported.
So join your hosts, Scott Monty and Bert Walder, as they talk about what's new in the world of Sherlock Holmes.
You couldn't have come at a better time!
I'm Bill Curtis. This is I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere. Now here are your hosts, Scott Monty and Bert Walder.
Thank you, Mr. Bill Curtis. Yes, it is I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, the first podcast for Sherlock Holmes devotees where it's always 1895. I'm Scott Monty.
I'm Bert Walder.
And Bert, are you... Have you got your hand inserted into the side of your jacket there and your bicorn hat? You have that on?
Well, the problem with a bicorn hat is, first of all, you got to buy it. I just want to rent one.
Bicorn.
How often? Yeah. How often can you walk around with that thing on your head? But, as a matter of fact, I do have a bicorn hat. So,
well, look,
so what's it to you?
There's a couple of ways to go about this. One is you can wear it the wide way, as Napoleon would, but then you can turn it 90 degrees and pretend you are part of the Admiralty.
Yeah.
So,
well, that'll help you in battle. I mean, see, if he'd remembered that at Waterloo, he wouldn't have had any problem at all. He would have said, "Mes amis, turn your hats. Turn your hats and join the British." And then stab them in the back.
The perfect disguise.
Yeah.
Well, we are not here to wax poetic about Waterloo. But we are here to give some props to Napoleons of some sorts. We have a couple with us, a Harker and a Gassigine, in fact, from the Six Napoleons of Baltimore. They have a big 80th anniversary meeting coming up at the end of September. So we will be talking with Mike McSwiggin and Greg Ruby about that. And, of course, we have other events going on just past that. Into the first 2 weeks of October. We'll tell you all about what's going on around the world of Sherlockians. And we have another film review, or in this case, a TV series review from our friend Christian Mongard in the Examining the Pictures segment. And then finally, stay tuned for our canonical couplet, where we will give you 2 lines of rhyming poetry and ask you to solve for which Sherlock Holmes story we happen to be referring to. The winner, who will be chosen from all of the correct submissions at random, will win a prize from the iHo's vaults. And before you previous winners get all salty at me, yes, it's been a busy summer, and no, your gifts have not gone out yet. So I appreciate your patience. If you could just grant me a little bit of grace, we'll take care of you. Don't worry. In the meantime, if you wouldn't mind taking care of us, that helps us take care of you. You can do that on Patreon or on Substack. You can take out a subscription as a member on either one of those platforms. You can do it on a monthly basis, or you can do it discounted on an annual basis for less than $1 a month over on Patreon. And you can choose whatever level works for you. Some of our higher levels have thank you gifts where we send out stickers and mugs. And if you would like a mug or a sticker or a notepad, an I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere notepad, we would be happy to send you one if you don't feel like doing the monthly or annual support. You can purchase those outright at our merchandise store. Links to all of these platforms is in the show notes. Whatever you choose, we really appreciate your support of what we do here at I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere. Okay, here we are. It's October. The wind is starting to turn. The leaves are turning. My goodness, is that a child I hear sobbing in your chimney, Bert?
No, my stomach is turning, actually.
As the stomach turns.
As the stomach turns.
Well,
yes.
where do we find ourselves kicking off October in the Sherlockian event world?
On the 1st of October, we're in Montreal with the bimetallic question. One metal won't do. You need bimetallics. And they're having a meeting. Edith Poundon is your contact, and they have a website you can look at, bimetallicquestion.org.
Should I wear my bicorn hat to the bimetallic question?
Well, actually, I like to wear a tricorn hat because it surprises people.
Well, then you're going to need a trimetallic question.
No, they just say, here comes that jester again. I have to get those pom-poms off, you see, and then they'll take me more seriously.
And you need to get the little squeaks out of your shoes, little horns you have attached.
Well, I'm very fond of those, you know. I mean, it always helps. Although it tends to mystify when I find people who are visually impaired trying to cross the street. I usually have to reach out, you know, when they start to move into traffic. But I don't mind doing that.
Well, Nick Martorelli can help you on October 3rd in New York, New York. The Priory Scholars are having a meeting in person. You can find out more at prioryscholarsnyc.wordpress.com.
And also on the 3rd, 5 miles from anywhere. So that could be right in your neighborhood. A virtual meeting. Contact Derek Belanger for more information.
For those of you in the upper Midwest, our friend Rich Krishunas is the contact for the Greek interpreters of East Lansing, Michigan. They're having a meeting on October 3rd. No description as to where yet, but Rich will take care of you. His email address is available on the website.
And also October 3rd, Silver Spring, Maryland. It's the fall meeting of the Red Circle of Washington, D.C., the fall luncheon. I think Julie McCurris is the speaker. And registration is now open at redcircle.org. And, of course, Peter Blau has all the information.
The crew of the Bark Lone Star is having a virtual meeting on October 4th. You can find out more at dfw-sherlock.org. Steve Mason will send out your invitation.
And if that long-term allergic cough is troubling you in Denver, Colorado on October 4th, you can join Dr. Watson's other neglected patients for a luncheon meeting. Derek Belanger has all the information, and the website is www.dwnp.com.
All right, strap on your hats. It is time for a succession of many meetings in just a couple of days. First, on October 6th in Vancouver, British Columbia, the Stormy Petrels are having a study session. Sheldon Goldfarb can tell you more at thestormypetrels.com.
And the Transfixed Correspondents of Phoenix are having a virtual meeting on the 7th. Lauren Cerconi has more info.
On October 7th also, it's the Ash Wednesday dinner. Shana Carter can help you out, and if you're there, you can Kiss My Ash.
And that's in New York. And then on the 8th, Bound Brook, New Jersey, the Redheaded League of Jersey is having their 50th anniversary dinner. And I'm going to be there, and we've got some wonderful special things happening. And that's in Bound Brook, New Jersey, the 50th anniversary of the Redheaded League of Jersey. Bruce Harris has more information.
Wow, 50th anniversary. That's the gold anniversary.
Yeah.
You giving gold away?
Well, I don't want to, spoil the surprise.
Oh, okay. Well, if you can't make it down to Bound Brook, New Jersey, Hanover, New Hampshire on that very same day, October 8th, can find you with the Sherlock Holmes Club of the Upper Valley. They're having a meeting there in Hanover, and John T. Holitz is your contact. You can find out more at thehow.org/programs. I guess that's the How Library in Hanover.
And October 10, The Parallel Case of St. Louis, a virtual story discussion. Contact Rob Nunn for more information.
On October 10th, also in Chicago, Illinois, belly up to the Criterion Bar. They're having a meeting, and Ruth Goman is your contact there.
And at last, we get to the middle of October, October 15, Columbia, South Carolina. The Handsome Wheels are having a handsome dinner meeting. Contact Phil DeMatteis for more information or their website, www.handsomewheels.com.
And that is not the last of items we want to share with you. There is one other that happens on September 20th.
Oh, thank you. Yes, our Clients of Adrian Mulliner, a crossover group of fans of P.G. Wodehouse and Sherlock Holmes, is having a virtual meeting on Sunday, September 20 at 2 p.m. for 1 hour. And we've got a wonderful speaker and a terrific quiz and a lot of fun. So that's the Clients of Adrian Mulliner, and I have more information about that, September 20, 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
And how do folks sign up for that?
They just get a hold of me, and I will make sure they're on the list for the Zoom invite.
Superb. You can find Bert through our email at comment@ihearofsherlock.com.
Yes.
Meanwhile, if you would like to explore more of the calendar, or you have events to add or know events that should be added, just check it out at SherlockianCalendar.com, and Ron Fish, his email address is right there. You can get in touch with him. Mike McSwiggin is a pharmacist originally from Baltimore, now living in Cincinnati. Mike's writing has appeared in many Sherlockian books and periodicals, and he's the associate editor of the Baker Street Journal. Mike has given presentations at Scion meetings and conferences, and loves taking hated topics like chronology and making them fun. Allegedly. Mike was invested in the Baker Street Irregulars in 2019 as the 7% solution. Greg Ruby was born a small child. He couldn't help it. He had no choice. He's the founder of the Fourth Garadeb, a scion society of coin-collecting Sherlockians. He's the founder and the SOB in charge of the Sherlockians of Baltimore, and is the current Harker of the Six Napoleons of Baltimore. Greg was invested into the Baker Street Irregulars in 2017 as Bulldog Pin with Ruby Eyes, and was honored with the 2 Shilling Award in 2023. Mike McSwiggin and Greg Ruby, welcome to I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us back.
Absolutely. Well, this isn't your first time around. I should say welcome back. Greg, you have been with us. You're a repeat offender. My goodness. 2 times so far. First on episode 128 to talk about Sherlockian coin collecting. And then again on episode 324 more recently. You and Steve Mason regaled us with tales of your road trip, which is that's something to behold. And Mike, you had just a glancing blow here on the show where I think Bert buttonholed you at the British
Empire.
the British Empire Conference. And folks can find that on episode 246. We'll have links to all three of your episodes so folks can go back and get more familiar with you. But in the meantime, why don't we refamiliarize ourselves with you and tell us about your first meeting with Sherlock Holmes. Mike, why don't you go first?
Well, I went to school at a ultra religious elementary school in the suburban Baltimore area, and most of the books in the library were very strange. Even the math books, I'm not kidding, the math books at that school would talk about if Jesus healed 2 lepers on Monday and 3 on Tuesday, how many did he heal? That kind of thing. So anyway, there weren't a lot of books to choose from, but they had a lot of Encyclopedia Brown books, which I roared through.
Yeah, but wait, I'm interested to hear the math and physics behind the loaves and fishes.
I mean, I'm trying to think of a class. It kind of depended each year on the teacher, but damage needed to be undone as I got older. I'll just say that. And that school doesn't exist anymore.
Oh.
And I actually, I was talking with our mutual friend, Karen Wilson, and I was mentioned about how hardcore this school was, and she laughed. She goes, "Oh, they're pretty middle of the road."
Oh, that's great.
Anyway, so I pestered the librarian there. I really enjoyed Encyclopedia Brown, and then she handed me a Sherlock Holmes book, and I was off to the races. It was great. I really enjoyed them, and I quickly went through the canon not long after. It's probably the only good thing that came out of that school.
Well, you came out of it, so that's a good thing.
No, included. That included.
Okay. Oh. And Greg, what about you?
I was introduced to Sherlock Holmes in Mrs. Raper's 5th grade reading class. It was the story of the 3 Garridebs. It's the only thing I remember from that year, and we even had to memorize some poem and recite it back to her during the course of the year. But again, I had no idea what that poem is, and it's been downhill ever since then.
Now, why that story? I mean, that's very unusual. The 3 Garridebs in the 5th grade.
Well, it's one of the better stories.
Convince us.
Yeah.
It's been used in 3 other plots for other stories, so why not?
Yeah, I
There you
guess so.
go. Well, maybe it has something to do with Watson being on the receiving end of gun violence in the Baltimore area.
Possibly.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I grew up 30 miles outside of Baltimore, so there wasn't a lot of gunfire in my youth.
Good.
The slogan through most of our lifetimes for Baltimore is the city that reads, and they would put it on bus stop benches. And I couldn't tell you how many different bus stops I would pass as I grew up where the reads was crossed out and bleeds was written on top of it.
Oh.
And Homicide, the studios for Homicide were about 2 blocks away from my university, which was in downtown Baltimore. So we would run into the Homicide folks all the time. I even remember walking out of class one day. We turned a corner, and there was a building that, I don't know, it was like 4 or 5 stories. And there was a guy leaning over the roof with a long gun. And my friends and I started yelling, and then we get a little bit further and realize, oh, it's the Homicide crew. It was just part of a scene. When you're from Baltimore, you just immediately assume
anything goes. Yeah. That's great. Now, Mike, you had mentioned to us in the run-up to the show here that you actually had a gap in your life between when you discovered Sherlock Holmes and when you actually discovered Sherlockians. You discovered Sherlockians earlier, but you couldn't quite make the event. Lead us down that path.
So, growing up in the suburbs of Baltimore, I would actually stay with my grandparents sometimes, and my grandfather would get the Baltimore News American, which is a defunct newspaper. And I remember reading when I was an elementary student at the time. There was an article about some weird group called the Six Napoleons of Baltimore were putting on this Sherlockian weekend at the Enoch Pratt Free Library where they would show some films and there'd be talks. And I just thought, wow, that just sounds awesome. And then later I read about this same group, the Six Napoleons, and how they would have these meetings at the greatest restaurant in Baltimore, which no longer exists, called Hausner's. Hausner's was so amazing. I went there every year with my parents for their anniversary. Talk about a couple of party animals. They would bring their only child with them on their anniversary date. My parents really know how to burn down a barn.
Did they let you smoke?
I couldn't smoke till I was 10. But anyway, the restaurant was technically German, but you could get, Baltimore-style seafood. The food was all amazing, but what was even better was the whole place was covered with incredible art. So much so they had extra, and you could go upstairs and they had kind of a mini museum. It was so vital to the 20th century Baltimore that when they did an episode of Mad Men and it took place in Baltimore, they actually digitally recreated Hausner's after it no longer existed.
Oh, wow.
It was that cool. So for a while, that's where the Six Napoleons met. But anyway, I didn't do any of that because I was too timid to ask my mom to drive me into town when I was a kid. So I just read by myself. I watch movies and TV shows, but I never interacted with anybody who enjoyed this stuff. And then after I graduated from pharmacy school, University of Maryland, after a couple years, I met someone who lived in Cincinnati, and she conned me into moving from Baltimore out to Cincinnati, where I still am. And she was working at a local university. She had a professor friend of hers who was into Sherlock Holmes and was telling her about this Sherlock Holmes group called the Tankerville Club of Cincinnati. And my wife said, you need to get the heck out of the house. And it sounds like these are people that you might get along with. And I went. I met the founder of the group, Paul Herbert, and we really hit it off, and he really encouraged me to keep going to other groups and writing and speaking. And actually the Six Napoleons turn 80 this year. The Tankerville Club turns 50 this year. So it's a pretty big year for a bunch of groups. But yeah, it's really because of Paul really nagging me that I started going to conferences and doing all kinds of stuff that I haven't figured out yet. I spent a lot of money doing it, but a lot of time doing it, but I haven't figured out how to make any money. And my wife always says, I tell you, for as hard as you work, you haven't managed to make 1 cent. And I said, maybe in another 20 or 30 years.
Keep at it, Mike.
Yeah.
Keep at it.
Yeah.
Well, and for those who actually do see you around at some of these Sherlockian events, you're not just there as a presenter or just a participant. You're manning a vendor's table. What's that all about? What are these wares all about?
So the founder of the Tankerville Club, Paul Herbert, he died, I think it was 2018. That feels right. Yeah, I think it was 2018. And so since then, I've been helping his widow, Barbara, to slowly liquidate his collection. He truly had one of the most amazing collections, kind of in the style of Shaw. He was a vacuum cleaner of a collector. And I only know of 1 or 2 people living who still collect like that, where every single thing that had anything to do with Sherlock Holmes, he would try to get his hands on. From kitty litter bags to egg crates to old wooden Coke crates. But it wasn't just stuff like that. He had amazing first editions. He had a 1 of 10 unique Hamlet by Vincent Sterrett. He had the that kind of famous. I'm not sure if it was memoirs. I'm forgetting, but it was a first edition that Doyle gave to Houdini, and later Houdini's widow's book plate is in it, and there's all the provenance papers and stuff. He had that. He had the one of the only intact movie posters from the Clive Brook Return of Sherlock Holmes. He had one of, I think, only 2 It was the original promo poster for the Hound of the Baskervilles. Just gorgeous. And he did all this on a teacher's salary, and he would always refer to his collection as his 401k. And so a lot of the really high-end stuff, went to different auctions. He had the largest Sherlockian comic book collection. He also had the world's largest Sherlockian pornography collection. So, it was a race to see what got bought faster, the comics or the porn. They were about neck and neck. But anyway, so he just had so much stuff. And so I started with maybe 375 banker boxes, 350, and I've got about 75 banker boxes left. So at different Sherlockian gatherings, whether it's the BSI in New York or Holmes in the Heartland or wherever else, I try to get a table, and I try to bring different stuff each time because there's so much to pick from, and I try to get weird things. For instance, at Holmes in the Heartland this year, I sold it was a Guns and Ammo magazine from maybe 20 years ago that had a feature on Sherlockian firearms.
Oh, wow.
There's all kinds of neat stuff out there. So, and it's a good way to meet people too. You get to chat with them. But yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
Now, Greg, what about you? I mean, your beginnings with Sherlock Holmes were kind of offbeat with the Three Garrett-Ebbs. It's not a typical story, but where did it finally lead to Sherlockians as we know ourselves?
Well, during the 80s and 90s, I would always hear about the Six Napoleons and this event that they did at the Pratt Library called Saturday with Sherlock. And I could never go to it. Either there was a conflict with work or with college or both at times. So I never got to go. And then on Christmas Day 2013, I decided to break my ankle going to brunch that day. Got to spend the next 6 months in bed. And thankfully, about a month before I broke my ankle, I decided to rearrange all the shelves in my library at home. And for the next 6 months, I could grab the Sherlock Holmes stories from my bed. Otherwise, I would be in a Tom Clancy club right now.
You know all those Tom Clancy events.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then like a week after, during the time of recovery, I heard about Scintillation of Signs. That was my first Sherlockian event in June of 2014. I met this guy named Scott Monty, who seemed like a cool dude at the time. Little did I know.
Overrated.
Then a week later, I attended my first meeting of the Six Napoleons. And it's been fun ever since. The Harker of the club at the time was reaching out to me going, because I was somewhat leery about going because I had a walker and a walking boot. And he's going, no, come on, you'll fit right in. And he was right, because when I got there was off to one side of the room like 6 wheelchairs, some walkers, and some canes. So I fit right in.
You brought the average age down from deceased to merely comatose.
We shall see.
Yeah. So, Greg, one of the things about the Six Napoleons is it's one of those first Sherlock Holmes groups, from the 1940s. I mean, there was the Amateur Mendicant Society and the Speckled Band, and this sort of literal handful of groups. And obviously, since it's the 80th anniversary, and I'm a college graduate, so that must mean it was founded in 1946.
I was told there'd be no math today.
Well, that's it. That's the only math. But tell us a little bit about the founding. How did the Six Napoleons come together, and who was behind it?
There was a gentleman by the name of Alan Robertson. He was an attorney for the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. He had interest in Sherlock Holmes and would correspond with people. He started a correspondence with Vincent Sterrett in Chicago. Went out there about a year before the Napoleon started. Got inspiration. And then the following year, in 1946, Alan Robertson went to New York to visit Edgar Smith, who was working for the General Motors Corporation in New York. He was being held in the reception area by Smith's secretary. 2 gentlemen walked into the office, and according to the lore, Robertson said 2 words, Sherlock Holmes. That stopped the 2 gentlemen from walking in. Edgar Smith very quickly got rid of his guest and invited Alan Robertson back to his office. And they talked Sherlock Holmes for like an hour or so.
Do we have any idea of what they, did they just talk about the hobby? Did Edgar kind of sanction a new group? Do you have any idea what went on there?
We are led to believe they mostly talked about the new Baker Street Journal at that time, and Smith gave his blessing for a Baltimore sign to be made.
And where did the name come from? You know, one of the things we found out recently, or at least I found out recently, is that there may be a little obscurity about some of these names. When I was out with Scott for the Amateur Mendicant Society, we stumbled across, thanks to Chris Music, some paperwork that suggested they started out with the name Dancing Men and then gave that over to the group in Providence before they settled on the Mendicants. But
interesting.
Was it always the Six Napoleons? Yeah, was it always the Six Napoleons? Has always been the Six Napoleons. Robertson came back to Baltimore. He was introduced to a gentleman, Richard Hart, at the Enoch Pratt Library. He was one of the main librarians there. He introduced Robertson to another gentleman by the name of Paul Clarkson. And those two were the two who led the Napoleons early on. Robertson, Napoleon I, Clarkson, Napoleon II. And they settled on a date, September 11th, 1946, to have their first meeting at a local Baltimore area restaurant called Marty's. 6 gentlemen showed up, and they were discussing possible names. And they remembered that there was a connection back to France for many years. We had a woman by the name of Mary Elizabeth Patterson who married Napoleon's brother. Now, Napoleon wasn't really happy about this, so he tried to annul the marriage. And she would eventually try to visit France with her husband. They would not let her off the boat, but she became one of the richest women in the country. So they decided to name the group after the 6 Napoleons with that connection to Napoleon. And where did the numbering come from? I know that all of the Napoleons are sort of numbered, and I gather Robertson was number 1, and then so on.
Mm-hmm. That's been a feature since day one. I think they like to show they knew Roman numerals.
Yeah, and I learned pretty quickly at the spring meeting where we invested some new members that when I have a piece of paper that has Roman numerals on them, it takes me a few seconds to convert that to a regular number. So I'm going to practice before the next meeting.
Well, you need to get over to trifles. We just celebrated episode D. That's an easy one. Can't wait till we get to episode E, Bert.
Me, that'd be great. So what are they up to? What are you, in Roman or other numerals, what are you up to?
We are in the high 270s now.
High 270. And what is that in Roman numerals? Is that XXX minus something?
CCLXXI.
Oh, very good.
And higher.
It's almost like a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So how does one even become a member of the 6 Napoleons of Baltimore? I mean, can anyone sign up to go to the dinner? But how does one become a member?
Well, anyone can come to the dinner.
It is a highly coveted process.
It's very important, though, to note anybody is welcome to the dinner. You don't have to be a Napoleon. We would encourage you to eventually become one. But, that takes a few steps. Greg, why don't you spell it out?
Okay. You come to 3 meetings. You are considered a neophyte. After your 3rd meeting, you undergo the Inquisition. Since 1946, no one has ever failed the Inquisition, but we keep hoping. Once you pass the Inquisition, you're now considered a postulant. Sometime in the future after that, you must give a learned presentation. Once you give that learned presentation, you are given your Napoleon number. It can't be that hard. Both Mike and I have passed.
So the way the Inquisition works is those folks are taken into another room and 3 people will ask questions. Sherlockian trivia. Some of it's, like what's your favorite Sherlock Holmes adaptation, but some of the questions are tricky. And then at a certain point in the dinner, a person, one of the 3, what is the word I'm trying to think of? Inquisitors.
Oh.
One of the 3 inquisitors will give the majority report, which is nice things about the people they were speaking with, and then the minority report is given, and it's almost always given by Greg, and it's a character assassination. he comes up with negative things about everybody. And he
and the
certainly
people should
came
listen to me, but they never do.
and he definitely came up with negative stuff when I became a Napoleon. He was not happy that he had heard a rumor that I was already a member of the illustrious clients of Indianapolis, and there was much booing and hissing because of the animosity between Baltimore and Indianapolis over the Colts. You would think Baltimore having the Ravens and the Ravens winning the Super Bowl and all this great stuff that's happened in all this time, there'd be no hard feelings. But to this day, if you're driving around Baltimore and you see a Mayflower moving truck, Mayflower was the company that moved the Colts in the middle of the night in a blizzard. And they kept the secret that the Colts were leaving. And one TV station found out, and there was like one camera that caught them packing stuff up into Mayflower moving vans. And so that footage is then shown on all the local news channels. And to this day, if you're driving around Baltimore and you see a Mayflower moving truck, you will see finger after finger after finger extend out of cars as the trucks go by. I'm not making that up. I would hate to be a Mayflower driver in Baltimore. That's got to be a stressful job.
That's fantastic.
But we're a classy town.
Yeah, evidently. Well, speaking of classy, why don't you guys tell us about what we can expect at the 80th anniversary dinner, when it is, where it's being held, the order of events, all that stuff.
The Six Napoleons 80th anniversary dinner will be on Friday, September 25th. Happy hour starts at 6 o'clock, with our dinner meeting starting at 7. We do some canonical toasts in the happy hour time. And that's also when we escort the people who are undergoing the Inquisition to that private room, so their screams cannot be heard by the other guests and scare at all. We have featured programs, quizzes, story discussion. Somehow we're talking about the story of the adventures of the Six Napoleons at this one.
Well, that's
Surprise.
Smart. Yeah.
Once in a while we get door prizes and a few other surprises.
And who is our featured presentation?
Oh, that guy now, Scott Monty.
Nobody wants to see that. Now, Mike, this, if I recall, this is your first meeting presiding as the new Gassagene. How did you stumble into that role?
I actually was thrown into this position during the last meeting, so I mostly presided over the spring meeting. But yeah, usually the Gassagene. Now keep in mind, Greg is the harker. He does all the hard work. He's a professional event planner, and he knows how to talk to people. I'm a pharmacist. I only know how to give people drugs. So you don't want me actually organizing a dinner. So he does all the hard work, and then I get to do a lot of talking in front of the room during the actual meetings. I help put together the program and stuff like that. But the Gassagene, which is what I'm doing, it's usually a 2-year gig. And the Napoleons only meet twice a year now, so it's 4 meetings total for me. And then, the group can breathe a collective sigh of relief when that 2-year term is over. But it helps to keep things fresh. There's some groups where the leader will be there for decades and decades. I'm not saying that's bad, but this is a good way to see different aspects of the group.
I'm jealous because as Gassagene of the Amateur Mendicant Society, it's a role that I have to inhabit for life or good behavior.
Well, I guess
Whichever
it'll be life
first. Yeah.
So, as the newest Gassagene, then, are you implementing anything special for this dinner, or using the 80th anniversary to, kind of bring anything special out?
So, we're trying to really get a lot of folks. I wouldn't want this to ever not be a Baltimore centric group. I want, the locals to come. I want what makes Baltimore special. And I'm not saying that in a snide way. I love being from Baltimore. But we're also trying to attract people from all over the place just to make it more fun. The more the merrier. And so we're gonna have a couple of neat surprises. We'll do all of our regular stuff. But instead of having a real simple folded one pager for the program, it's going to be something a bit more substantial. The world debut of some Sherlockian art by an unnamed Sherlockian artist who may or may not be my best friend of 30-something years will be there. Oddly, that person will be like a third of a mile away from the Six Napoleons dinner at the Baltimore Comic-Con. So I'm going to try to get that unnamed person, Frank Joe, to come toward the end of the dinner and at least make an appearance. So we'll have that. Everybody who attends is going to get a free premium, which I'm not going to talk about, but it'll be pretty neat. We've got some elaborate centerpieces that have all kinds of stuff that have to do with both Sherlock Holmes and Baltimore. There's going to be a lot of neat stuff. There is going to be a moment in the meeting where Greg and I are going to ask the crowd to keep a secret because we have a caper that we are going to announce to the group that requires some secrecy. I'm going to ask people not to take any photos. And I'll explain it all there. I'm trying to entice all the listeners. It's like, what the heck is this guy talking about?
I know.
But I'm not just making this up. This is a real thing. There's going to be a lot of fun things like that. We've got the brand new swag. Greg designed a beautiful new pin. Greg is amazing with pins and challenge coins. So those are going to be neat. We have our first ever tie. And we'll have all those kind of things available. Maybe a couple other surprises too. But we'll have all our regular stuff, but some fun stuff too. Of course, we'll be talking about the Six Napoleon story. But I want to celebrate the links Baltimore has to the Sherlockian world. If it weren't for Baltimore, you could argue that there wouldn't be BSI. Christopher Morley spent a decent amount of his youth growing up in Baltimore. His father was a professor at Hopkins. He fell in love with Sherlock Holmes at the Pratt, which is an amazing library where the Six Napoleons and the other Baltimore-centric Sherlockian groups have their annual Saturday get-together. Separate from this dinner. That'll be in November. And I didn't actually know till very recently that the gavel that Wiggins uses, the head of the Baker Street Irregulars, was donated to the BSI by the Six Napoleons. Steve Doyle was showing it off at when he stepped down as the illustrious client, the head of the illustrious clients, and then became Wiggins. He brought it in to show us, and I didn't know that. I thought that was really cool. So we'll be talking about that. We'll talk a little bit you were kind of talking earlier, Bert, about what was going on in 1946. We have a handful of these 80-year-old groups that are celebrating this year. The Amateur Mendicants of Detroit, the Illustrious Clients of Indianapolis, the Six Napoleons of Baltimore. And, I'll talk a little bit about 1946. World War II had just ended. America was not having a lot of fun. And nobody had any money. Nobody had any spare time. Many people were not here. They were overseas. And, the time was really right for having fun, and that ties in really well, too. The Rathbone films were getting pretty hot. So it was kind of a magic moment. And so we're kind of celebrating the anniversary of that now. It was funny. I was actually looking up the other day what other groups would turn 80, and there are a couple that I had never heard of, so I think they must have flamed out pretty quickly. Bert, you know much more about some of these things than I do. Do you know anything about the 17 Steps of Los Angeles?
Oh, Only that it's a name that I've heard. Scott may know something about it, but I don't know any details.
Wasn't it a
17
precursor to Alcoholics Anonymous for actors?
Well, the only thing I could find was that they apparently met in an actual private eye's office, which
That's
just
cool.
sounds ridiculous, but I love that.
I love that too. Wow.
And there were a couple groups that I think transmogrified into other groups. Solitary Cyclist of DC was one. But yeah, it was a magical year. So we're going to talk about that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, I just love the neat connections that Baltimore has with the wider Sherlockian world. So it's definitely time to celebrate that.
Well, and it's not just a dinner. It's not just that Friday evening, September 25th. It's a whole weekend.
That's right.
What does Bob Scharfman call it?
It's a food orgy. So while the Six Napoleons only meet twice a year now, in the spring and in the fall, Greg created another group that meets Saturdays for lunch, the Sherlockians of Baltimore, or the SOBs, and that always meets at a wonderful restaurant called Sabatino's in Little Italy. And you wouldn't, if you haven't been to Baltimore, you might not realize it, but the Little Italy in Baltimore is bigger than the Little Italy in New York, because the one in New York is almost completely Chinatown now. But there's just a really cool vibe there. So we'll have lunch on Saturday with the Six Napoleons. But the food orgy is because we're also going to meet at a neat restaurant for breakfast. So then we'll do lunch with the SOBs. And if you haven't been yet, you can become a certified SOB, which, of course, Greg was very early on. And then for dinner, a sub-scion of Spode, Sherlockians Preventing Oysters from Destroying the Earth, which is a seafood devouring group that meets every year in New York during BSI weekend at Grand Central Oyster Bar. So that got so popular, different Spode scions have popped up in different cities, and Baltimore's chapter is the Black Pearl of the Borgias, and that will be meeting at Jimmy's Famous Seafood, which is one of the best seafood restaurants in town. So again, if you leave Baltimore later than when you started, you're doing something wrong.
I have to bring my stretchy pants. Should be good. Well, and if folks would like to get more information about this entire weekend affair, you can go to SherlockBaltimore.com, and I recommend that you do that rather quickly, because the block of rooms for the hotel, that will be released as of August 25th, so you want to get right on that. And I understand the rooms have been going pretty quick. And then you need to get your RSVP in for the dinner by September 17th. So you do still have a little bit of time left there, but you might want to get right on that. Now, Greg, one of the features I see on this page about the meetings is something called the Paul Churchill Fund. What is the fund, and who was Paul?
Well, we believe Sherlockian meetings are much more fun with everyone in attendance. The more the merrier. So we've created this fund because going to all these dinners and luncheons can add up to a little bit of money after a few. So we've created this fund. It's much like the John Watson Fund from the BSI, and other groups have similar. So no good idea does not ever get ripped off from others by others. So we have the Paul Churchill Fund. If you go to any of the 3 club meetings in the Baltimore area, we will underwrite your price of attendance. Just write us a note to the Paul Churchill Fund at gmail.com. Say you need some help. We'll try to make it happen. And the nice thing is no one ever knows. Paul Churchill was a devoted Sherlockian, a retired Latin teacher from Howard County Public Schools here. And he passed away 2006, 2008, somewhere in that area, before I became involved with the hobby. But we're just trying to honor the memory of a wonderful man.
He was indeed wonderful. And he had these lovely evidence boxes, he called them. And he would either source or create pieces that represented things in each of the 60 stories And he had 60 boxes that he put together. And we talked to Deborah Clark about that on episode 245 about evidence boxes. You can go back and listen to that as well. I have a link to that in the show notes. But that was, to me, one of his long-standing contributions to the Sherlockian world, because it brought alive so many of these stories, and they were so cleverly done, and Paul was just so wonderful in taking people through each of the pieces in each of the boxes. So, are you guys going to bring the box for the Six Napoleons to the meeting?
I think we can make that happen.
Yay!
There you go. Well, consider your inspiration here. Well, fantastic. Good friends, good conversation, lots of great food to be had. The weekend of September 25th and 26th in Baltimore, Maryland. Folks can check it out at SherlockBaltimore.com. Greg and Mike, thank you for joining us on I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere. Is there anything we've missed with respect to the Six Napoleons and your 80th anniversary before we wrap up?
Just one thing. While you have until September 17th to sign up for most of the events that weekend, we ask that you do try to sign up earlier so we can actually plan to have all the tchotchkes and everything. Mm-hmm. If there's a last-minute rush, we may have an issue.
Perfect. All right, folks, get to it. Guys, thanks again for being on I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Bert.
Thank you, gentlemen. We look forward to seeing you.
Isn't that great? Every time, it's wonderful that we're in this age now, 2026, of these anniversaries coming up that take us back to the 1940s and these early groups. And isn't it interesting how different the stories are? How it all started. Somebody has a dinner, 6 people show up, there's a link to Baltimore. Hey, why don't we be the Six Napoleons? There you go. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it really is. And like you said, everybody's got a different origin story. This is like, when we invite people on and ask them about their first meeting with Sherlock Holmes, you've got school time story reading that they've done. There are people who have seen the Rathbone play. There's other people that, maybe heard something on the radio. Everybody's got a different way into it, but all familiar in one way or another. And I think that's exactly what we see here. America in the 1940s was still very regionally divided. So you had your regional versions of the Sherlockian organizations, and ultimately coming together under the BSI, and all having, well, of course, the Baker Street Journal just launching that year. So there's this thread that starts to unite them all together. And look, here we are, 80 years later, the beneficiaries of all of it. Well, we find ourselves once again in the wonderful company of Mr. Christian Mongard, our resident film reviewer. Looks like he's going to take us not to the theater, but to the telly.
Sherlock Holmes as a high-functioning sociopath. That's right, that's the take on the character in Sherlock, the BBC's acclaimed Sherlock Holmes series, which started in 2010 and ended in 2017. Sherlock is set in the present day, complete with mobile phones, computers and nicotine patches, while staying true in spirit to Dr. Watson's original Victorian stories. My name is Christian Mongard, and this is Examining the Pictures. It seems an almost foolhardy endeavor to dramatize and reinvent Sherlock Holmes. It has been attempted countless times, and only a handful of those adaptations have truly endured in the public imagination and in the eyes of most Sherlockians. Nevertheless, that is precisely what two of British television's best writers, Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss, attempted with the BBC-produced Sherlock, whose 4 seasons transport the stories into the present day.
Who are you? What do you do?
What do you think?
I say private detective.
When the police are out of their depth, they consult me.
Got anything?
This is his hunting ground, right here in the heart of the city. Why didn't I think of that? Because you're an idiot.
This is my friend, John Watson.
Friend? Colleague? That's how you get your kicks, isn't it? You risk your life to prove you're clever.
Shut up. I'm saying we're thinking. It's annoying.
You like the funny cases, don't you? The surprising ones.
Obviously. The game, Mrs. Hudson, is on.
The ideas seem very audacious, even sacrilegious, yet Moffat and Gatiss have actually created the finest, most compelling and entertaining interpretation of Sherlock Holmes since the 1980s, when Jeremy Brett delivered the definitive portrayal against which every subsequent Holmes has been inevitably measured. Stephen Moffat, one half of the creative partnership behind Sherlock, previously wrote the witty relationship comedy Coupling. However, it is his work on the classic British science fiction series Doctor Who, and particularly his inventive reinterpretation of Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that has earned him widespread respect among popular culture enthusiasts. Since Sherlock, he and Gatiss have also written an interesting version of Dracula, with fellow Dane Claes Bang as the blood-sucking count. It makes perfect sense that Moffat, alongside Gatiss, who also wrote for Doctor Who, should be the one to breathe new life into Sherlock Holmes. They have changed a great deal, yet they remain faithful to the character's essence and to the spirit of Holmes and Watson's world. They clearly know the detective and, just as importantly, they genuinely love him. In an interview done at the time, Moffat remarked, and I quote, "Some Sherlock Holmes adaptations treat the material as though it is Jane Austen, making it terribly slow and dull. But it isn't like that at all. Sherlock Holmes isn't that sort of thing. It's something children would read. Compared with other Victorian literature, it's astonishingly fast-paced. It must have given readers whiplash at the time." Watching Sherlock may not quite produce whiplash, but the series is anything but dusty in its visual style. The pace is brisk and the production makes imaginative use of visual effects to illustrate the workings of Holmes' extraordinary mind. Text messages appear on screen, as do maps, words, and other pieces of information when Holmes is thinking. Holmes and his friend and colleague Dr. Watson race through London's neon-lit streets in black cabs, a far cry from the horse-drawn hansoms and fog-shrouded cobbled alleys illuminated by gas lamps that dominate most previous adaptations. The result is both intelligent, funny, and exciting. The series quickly proved a considerable success with both critics and TV audiences in Britain and abroad, though the later seasons were not as popular as the first 2 or 3. More on that in a later installment of Examining the Pictures. Holmes is played by Benedict Cumberbatch, who proved to be a fascinating discovery in the series. Though he had appeared in films before, Sherlock was his breakthrough, making him a star. He may have been one of the youngest actors ever to portray the adult Holmes on screen, and he is every bit as dynamic, brilliantly intelligent, and eccentric as the role demands. Martin Freeman, who was then mostly known for the excellent original British version of The Office, is just as good in the role of Dr. Watson. At one point, Holmes describes himself in a piece of self-diagnosis entirely in keeping with contemporary sensibilities as a high-functioning sociopath. He's antisocial, arrogant, and utterly intolerant of the many fools, particularly policemen who populate the world around him, exactly as he is in Dr. Watson's stories. Among them is Detective Inspector Lestrade, played by Rupert Graves, with whom Holmes maintains a distinctly strained relationship, though they do become friends later on. Lestrade can tolerate Holmes's dazzling deductions only when he finds himself completely out of his depth and unable to solve a case by conventional means. And that happens quite a lot. In the first episode of Sherlock, A Study in Pink, the title of course alludes to the first Holmes story, A Study in Scarlet, Holmes first meets his future companion, Dr. John Watson, a restless, battle-scarred veteran of the war in Afghanistan, who finds peace only when confronted with excitement. And who could offer more excitement than Sherlock Holmes? The two very different bachelors quickly strike up a rapport, addressing one another by their first names. It is the 2010s after all, before deciding to share a flat at 221B Baker Street naturally. Their new landlady, Mrs. Hudson, played by the wonderful Una Stubbs, is happy to have them, but she insists several times while serving them tea and biscuits, "I'm not your housekeeper." Mrs. Hudson becomes a very important character in the series, and so does Molly Hooper, played by Louise Brealey, the forensic scientist who is in love with Sherlock while he, true to his nature, treats her as yet another item in his detective toolbox, at least to begin with. Almost immediately in the first episode and throughout the first season, Holmes and Watson become embroiled in a series of extraordinary cases involving strange suicides, dangerous Chinese tongues, bomb threats, and a mysterious figure named Moriarty.
Do you know what happens if you don't leave me alone, Sherlock? To you?
Oh, let me guess. I get killed.
Kill you? No, don't be obvious. I mean, I'm going to kill you anyway someday. I don't want to rush it, though. I'm saving it up for something special. No. If you don't stop prying, I'll burn you. I will burn the heart out of you.
Moriarty only appears in person at the end of the first season's final episode and turns out to be a very frightening man, played with charm and more than a pinch of menace and madness by Andrew Scott. It is particularly enjoyable to see how Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss adapt Holmes to the modern world in which he now lives and works. For example, the heavy smoker of the original stories now relies on nicotine patches simply because being a smoker in modern-day London has become so inconvenient. A case that once required 3 pipefuls of tobacco to unravel has become instead a 3-patch problem. Holmes also makes full use of computers and mobile phones in his investigations, although it is naturally still his formidable intellect that remains his greatest investigative tool. There are scenes in which Holmes exercises his mind to the fullest, and as a viewer one gets to follow his deductions and reasoning. Moffat has also said of his and Gattis's take on Sherlock Holmes, and I quote, "We didn't take anything away. We were actually rather meticulous about our Sherlock Holmes. There is remarkably little that needs changing in order to place Sherlock Holmes in the modern day. The historical period has become welded to Sherlock Holmes, and I genuinely don't believe it should be." End quote. The series also cleverly suggests that Watson's written accounts of his adventures with Holmes are no longer published in magazines or books. Instead, they appear on the blog Watson's psychologist has encouraged him to keep as a way of processing his experiences and trauma from the war. It is difficult to imagine a more contemporary reinterpretation than that, and it is something that Moffat and Gatiss play with throughout the seasons, aided by excellent visually inventive directors such as Paul McGuigan and Nick Horan. In coming installments of Examining the Pictures, I will delve more into this and the subsequent seasons of Sherlock. My name is still Christian Mongard. Thank you for listening.
Well, there you go.
Fabulous.
Yes.
I really, I love the way Christian started that. He said, the finest, most compelling interpretation since Jeremy Brett. And boy, that is a great summary.
Yeah, and the modernization of Sherlock Holmes, I know a lot of purists wrinkle their noses at that, but think about it. Sherlock Holmes was a modern man of his time, and the methods that he employed were those that were either about to be introduced to the police, or thanks to his work, were introduced to the police. So it was a very contemporary series of its time. And, the very fact, this always struck me with Sherlock, the very fact that we open with a wounded doctor coming back from the war in Afghanistan. Well, guess what, kids? The Afghanistan war was still going on when this modern version happened. So it's uncanny how well it actually worked. Well, those little strings means, of course, it's time for Canonical Couplet, where we give you 2 lines of poetry and ask you to tell us which Sherlock Holmes story we are talking about. If you recall, Around these parts in episode 339, we gave you this clue. A furtive physiologist who now ignores his secretary will owe his life to Watson in a case that's cautionary. Bert, do you know which story we're talking about?
Oh, yes, I do. Oh, boy. That is the last recorded case of Sherlock Holmes. It's the story of a German espionage ring.
Uh-oh.
On the eve of World War I, creating a shortage of British beef. It's the case Watson called his last cow.
It's a madhouse! A madhouse!
Yeah, no. And in case you can't tell, I've been going through some of my old sound effects files to mix things up here a little bit. So folks are going to get all kinds of treats to the ears in the months and episodes ahead.
Okay.
So no, that was not actually what we were looking for. However, as you can imagine, our friend Eric Deckers has once again come to our merciful rescue.
Hooray!
He says, Aurumai, I've solved it. That's Tamil, by the way. It's the story where Holmes and Watson are called to investigate the strange behavior of Professor Presbury, who behaves strangely every 9 days. He acts almost like a monkey who attempts to perform with several marching band instruments. Well, that spells trouble with a capital T, and that rhymes with D, and that stands for drugs. Watson called the story The Creeping Music Man. Except that doesn't sound right because I don't think Sherlock Holmes has ever been in a musical. So it's more likely to be The Adventure of the Creeping Man. Yes, Eric. Sherlock Holmes himself has not been in a musical, but there was a musical made about Sherlock Holmes, of course, Baker Street. Folks may remember that we interviewed Fritz Weaver, who played Holmes in that Broadway production, on episode 26. That's a good one. You can go back to that. Okay, well, we did have a number of people who decided to throw their deer stalkers into the ring, and so we're going to bring out the prize wheel and give it a big spin. Watching it go around and land on number 37. Lucky 37. And that looks like it belongs to Olivia Kirkendall. Olivia, congratulations. Had a chance to meet Olivia in St. Louis just last month. So it's nice to put a face to the name and the canonical couplet winner. So Olivia will have an item from the iHose vaults out to you as soon as we can manage. Well, we did say that we are going to give you another challenge this time around. We do not shirk from that, and now we will give you the clue. An unmarked body and a diabolical agency will require Watson to act tenaciously. If you know the answer to this episode's canonical couplet, put it in an email addressed to comment@ihearofsherlock.com with canonical couplet in the subject line. If we choose your name from random from all the correct answers, you'll win. Good luck. All righty. You already starting to burn the midnight oil on that one, Bert?
Well, I'm looking for matches. That's a start, I suppose.
Shouldn't be too problematic, I wouldn't think.
No. Well, there are only 60 cases. How hard could it be?
Yeah. And you got 20 matches.
Really? Do I? Okay.
Well, in one book.
Mm.
Yeah.
And there's volume 2?
Volume 2 and 3. Three books of matches.
No, wait a minute. That can't be right.
Yes.
So it's 4. Isn't it 4 calling? No. How many calling birds? 3 books of matches. 5 golden. No, that's. Oh, wait a minute. We're just in October now.
Yeah,
so, Forget I said anything. I do that all the time, by the way. Forget
do
I
you?
said anything. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that kind of brings us to the end of the show. I know. Folks are kind of sad about that, but
yeah, I'm so glad we had this time together.
Yes, I'm so glad we had this time together.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, in that case, let's see what's left to wrap up here. We'll see you in Baltimore. And stuff like that. Enjoy the rest of your summer, folks.
Yeah.
We've got one episode to drop before Labor Day, which kind of unofficially marks the end of summer here in the States. We have lots of great guests lined up for the future. It's just a matter of figuring out the scheduling, but it's going to be a really nice series of episodes ahead. Not that this one wasn't. But, and of course, check out our sister podcast, Trifles. Our discussion show comes out on a weekly basis. We recently celebrated our 500th episode over there, as we alluded to. So you might want to check Trifles out and see what interests you. We do have a series of collections of episodes lined up. Things like, the inside of 221B Baker Street, and sports and games in the canon, and music, and the Apocrypha, and unpublished cases, and food. And we regularly look at Sherlockian scholarship to help you understand what goes into being a Sherlockian. So it's all great stuff over at Trifles. In the meantime, this is the trifling Scott Monty.
And I'm the rifling Bert Wolder.
And together, we say...
No!
The game's
afoot.
The game's afoot.
I'm afraid that in the pleasure of this conversation, I am neglecting business of importance, which awaits me elsewhere.
Thank you for listening. Please be sure to join us again for the next episode of I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, the first podcast dedicated to Sherlock Holmes.
Goodbye, and good luck, and believe me to be, my dear fellow, very sincerely yours, Sherlock Holmes.